Hello friends, welcome to Akul Mac Live, and I am your host today, Chandrakant. And today we have a very important subject. It's a global news. There is a Afghan crisis just brewing in the neighborhood. Especially I'm an Indian, so it's my neighborhood. And the entire world is actually watching on the TV, what's going on. What we can learn from this crisis. To discuss this matter, I will be joined by a very eminent personality from UK. So friends, don't go anywhere. I'll take a short break and join back along with my guest. Hello friends, welcome back, and I'm very pleased and honored to have Neville Gaunt, the chairman of MindFit Ltd, joining us from UK this morning for him, afternoon for me. How are you, Neville?
Good morning, CK. Good morning, everybody. Yes, very well. Thank you very much. I'm about to go on a few days vacation, so very excited about that. And lots of news in the world that's ringing around our ears. Some good, some not so good. And yeah, I'm really excited to be talking about what we can learn from the Afghanistan crisis. I think everyone's spoken about over the next 20 minutes or so.
Absolutely, Neville. In fact, what is going on today? It's like this. Since 80s, since my childhood, I have been seeing a lot of people who are poking their nose in the Afghan affairs. First, it was themselves, then the Russians, then Americans, then everybody else. Then in between, India also started establishing infrastructure there, which we are still doing it. But it seems that the Afghan people don't want any one of us. So what is the learning? I think the message that I want to send personally is that what we should do if such a situation we encounter in our business by learning from this experience. What is your opinion, Neville?
Well, what I don't want to do today is talk about the political issues around Afghanistan, because frankly, I don't really know what they are. I don't even know if the politicians know what they are. But you're right. Let's look at the history. People poking at your affairs. What does it do for you? Does it nudge you along a better direction? Does it make you angry and be more defensive? Or are you smart enough just to listen and observe? And today I'm going to use 3 words. They all begin with a letter A. It's about being aware, assessing the situation, and taking action. So awareness, assessment, and action. And no matter what faces you, I think that's the best thing we can do. We can be aware of what's going on. So if people are poking and prodding at you from a distance, just be aware of it. And then assess what's going on. Is it going to be of any benefit to me? If it is, I need to do something with it. If it isn't, I need to do something with that too. And that's the action bit. And it's the taking action that's most important. And I'm not talking about military action as we've currently got, which is very defensive action in Afghanistan. I'm talking about action that's going to be effective for your business. So the simple thing, CK, does that make sense to you? Be aware, assess it, and take action.
Yes, Neville. In fact, I want to ask you, you might have seen it, I've seen it, you might have seen it a couple of times in your corporate career, is that if the senior management wants to bring about a change in your organization, they don't do it by themselves. They will actually ask an external agency to come and help them. It's like this, if some people need to be fired, they can fire themselves. But no, they don't want to do that. What they want to do is they will ask one of these consulting companies and say that, hey, you come, you give assessment report, and then you fire these people. This is exactly what is going on in Afghanistan. People should be driving themselves as per their whims and fancies and their culture and their traditions. as their business, whatever they feel is right. But some of these people are calling external help, and this is going on since 1980s. I think this is exact correlation that why I understood, Neville.
Yeah, you're exactly right, CK. And there are some similarities to bringing in a third party to help you do things. Maybe not because you're not very good at it, but maybe because you believe in that third party. And let's just look at the transition of Afghanistan. Irrespective of why the foreign organizations entered into Pakistan, they were there, and we were there, and what the intention was to help the company develop and transition, and effectively put down a threat to the rest of the world. And that's what goes on in business all the time. We're trying to eliminate the threats. And then there's this transition piece. So you go in and you help people do things, and then you transition out and you move away. And that's what the big four all companies do. I mean, a chief exec will say, we need help. But unlike Afghanistan, where you just went in, you're invited in. And the invitation comes in. But again, when you get a consultant coming into your organization, there's a lot of people in your organization that will fight like the Taliban. They will put up some barriers, and they will stop these people coming in and finding out what you do. Why? Because you see them as a threat. And frankly, I've been there, and I know you've been there, CK. In the first 2 or 3 instances, I saw them as a threat. After a while, I knew they were coming in. So, what's the point? I just give them everything they want to do. And they're only going to tell the senior executives, the people running the organization, allegedly, what they want to hear anyway. And frankly, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that was always good news, because I've already been telling them what's going on in the organization. So I was a bit of a maverick in my day, but telling people the truth. But the problem is, a lot of people can't handle the truth. So that's why you bring in these third party consultants in to come and tell you just exactly what's going on. But the key to this is, how do you transition out? And I've always found, CK, I don't know about you, that it's the transition piece which is so poorly executed that after about 3 or 4 years, we're talking about huge organizations here, but after about 3 or 4 years, you've just gone back almost to do the same thing you did 3 or 4 years ago. So there's been a temporary improvement. It hasn't been long lasting. There's been a lot of infighting. You could have lost some really good people along the way, along with Deadwood. But now you're 4 or 5 years further on. And to be honest with you, you're no further along your growth or your survival process. Does that story sound familiar to you?
Yes, it does. In fact, in the corporate world, what goes on is that we should be minding our own affairs, looking at our own castles, and making sure that all repair works are done internally. But, the senior management choose not to. I mean, the decision maker in the company, they will say, hey, I don't want to do this dirty job. If I have to hire people, I can do it. I will pay them $1 million, let them do it. Or maybe $10 million, let them do it for me. And I think the second question that therefore I have is, all the external agencies initially went in to control few things, but then later on they didn't want to stay there. But I think the excuse to stay there is that, hey, we guys are training them how to be democratic, how to make party system, how do you fight elections. I think it's been going on for last so many years. I think almost my age, since the time I've taken birth, I have been seeing this crisis, and first Russians and so I think it is like that. So if a company doesn't know how to do business, what external help can help them? First of all, they don't know. I mean, first of all, they have to know about it, why they are in business. So I think the second question, therefore, is, what is going on here? What the CEOs can learn from Afghan crisis? Is it something that they should look internally first in order to steer their company in the right direction, or they should ask for external help? What is your opinion, Nabil?
It's a really good question, CK, as ever. And the simple answer is, looking at Afghanistan, imposing change isn't going to work unless you can police that change. Unless you're there, and we're going to see the change that we've seen from the Taliban coming in is that they are coming in firing guns. Now, if as a chief exec, that's what your intention is to do, and stand there with the equivalent of an AK-47 sitting on your desk, then that is your authoritative approach to change, and frankly, it's not gonna work unless you've got that rule of but you're gonna fire that gun. There's no threat here. This is a promise. I will shoot you. Okay, and that's what we're going through at the moment. That's the imposition that's happened, and indeed, that was the imposition that happened 20 odd years ago, when these foreign parties went into Afghanistan and said, we're going to help you change. Now, so a CEO needs to literally sit back and smell the roses, because there's this thing called the hearts and minds of the organization. And we're seeing it now in digital transformation. To me, there are very few companies that actually are understanding digital transformation, or indeed doing digital transformation. They're doing digital change, but for some, that means everyone's going online. Now, that's not a transformation, because all we're doing is doing exactly the same thing and trying to force it into an online situation. That's not a transformation. That's not even a change. That's actually saying we're setting ourselves up to fail, because in the digital world, we have to do things differently. And it's as simple as that. It's almost like, you're using a new golf club. You've bought this 7-iron, brand new 7-iron, and you're swinging it, and it doesn't feel like your 7-iron. Well, guess what? Because it isn't yet. You haven't got used to it. You haven't felt the different weight of the club. When you swing it, it's heavier. So you've got to use more power in the backlift. But the point is, until you recognize that, you're never going to use that club to the best of its abilities. You're still going to be using your old 7-iron rather than your new 7-iron. And I'm sorry for people that don't understand golf, but it's like anything else. If you start drinking your tea out of a mug rather than a cup, the tea is going to taste different, guaranteed, because it's coming out of a different piece of equipment. I mean, it's bizarre because it's the same tea. You've made it in exactly the same way, but our brain says, well, it's not a cup, it's a mug. And that's what we've got to do. It's as simple as that, really. That's what we've got to do. We've got to look at the transformation, and we've got to build and breed the hearts and minds solution. And this is going back to the 3 A's: being aware of what's happening, assessing the situation, and taking action. So if you start to impose change on the organization with a whip, and you literally walk around, I'm not physically saying you walk around your organization with a whip, but some people feel as though you're walking around the organization with the whip. You're doing the leadership bit, you're walking the talk, but people don't like the particular walk and the talk you're giving, because you're not engaging them. You're not empowering them. You're not educating them. You're not exercising their mind to say, come with me. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a different journey. But at the end of it, we're going to come out better. And fundamentally, a leader's saying, trust me. And that's a big problem, because not many people trust their leaders. Does that make sense, CK? You seen this around?
I think this is fantastic. I think it's a special correlation that we can learn from this Afghan crisis, is that we need to look inwards and see where the problem is and then solve that problem, rather than, if we can't solve the problem, there is no point in calling external help, because in the end it will turn up like Afghanistan, because the people don't want democracy, and yet the rest of the world is trying to teach them democracy for the last 50 years, but they simply don't want it. And I think you mentioned one very good point, is that the Taliban came blazing guns. But I think in reality, people accepted Taliban. They willingly allowed them to come and overtake their country. This is what is happening. So this is a power struggle within the organization. So my question now, Naval, is, when the CEO wants to change and his employees don't want to change, in such a situation, what is his choice? What he should do? What is your thinking about exact correlation from Afghan crisis into this scenario, where the CEO is trying very hard to bring the change, but the employees of the organization don't want to change? What he should do?
Well, I don't know if you can see clearly what's in the background. What you're saying is the CEO has a can-do attitude, the organization has a can't or won't do attitude. This is common. This is why you change the chief exec. You change the leadership. When you want to go in a different direction, you tend not to change anyone down the scope. You change at the top. And we don't see it often enough in big businesses, but we do see it in the smaller organizations, where the chief exec has got sort of a 2 or 3 year tenure, and then they're out because they haven't made change happen. But there is a simple answer here. There are lots of leadership traits that we hear from time to time. All the leadership books say exactly the same thing. If you're going to embrace change in an organization, and that's what this new leader's been brought in to do, you have to get hold of the hearts and minds. You have to work out in the organization, and you need to pick out every single person and show them what's in it for them. Why this is a good thing to do. How to galvanize their focus on what they do. Because the likelihood is, if people are resisting change in an organization, then they're stunting their own growth. Now, I'm making a small assumption here that the change is good for the organization. It may not be good for you. I've worked in organizations in the past where people were let go. So it wasn't going to be, we call it restructuring, re-engineering, downsizing, call it what you like, really. There are so many words in the dictionary that have been addressed to this. But it's a business process review, fundamentally. And the business process review does those 3 A's. They're very aware of what's happening. They assess what's going on and they take action. And typical business process reviews look on outcomes, outputs. What do we do as an organization? Really, really big question for a board, let alone a chief exec. Because if you ask many people on boards, it will take them time to explain what they do. More importantly, it will take them even more time to explain why they do it. In other words, what's in it for our customers? Why do our customers stay with us? There are other providers out there doing exactly the same thing. I've got an iPhone. but there are 30 or 40 other smartphones that are out there. So why would I choose an iPhone? But my point is, the customer's always right. We've seen examples at CK. I mean, you can remember the Kodak example. Do you remember Kodak were literally the biggest photography company in the world. It was a monopoly. They had cameras and they had film and they had processing units all around the world. And digital cameras came along. And the interesting thing is, Kodak had a digital camera. They were one of the first because they were pioneering growth. And they said, this will never take off. So look what happened. All of our photographers out there, they're going to want the film. They're going to want the touch and the hard plates. And they literally held on to a belief. And of course, customers said, so I don't have to just take 36 pictures and then send them away, and 48 hours later I get them back and think, kept my thumb over the lens. I've been there, Now you can take a picture and say, that any good? In fact, what you can do, even then, you could go click, 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 and pick the best one of a series of 10, because there'll be something slightly different. And that's what Kodak missed. They missed the versatility. They missed being agile, this word that is so often used these days that not many people really understand what it really means. It just means, being adaptable. If there's two paths, well, go down one path. If that path's got a dead end, so what? I know, I've now proved something. That wasn't the good choice. I now need to go and find out the next path. And then you go down that next path and all of a sudden you get 3 choices and you think, that's all right, I've done this before. If there's a dead end, I'm just going to come back and choose one of the other 2. And that's about being agile. And again, chief execs are not very agile. It's one-way system. So, coming back to your question, CK, as ever, it's not going to work. If a chief exec has got a very toxic arena in the organization, there's no point in imposing any sort of change. You need to go out there. I mean, what I would do is I would go out and find out who are the protagonists, who are the naysayers. And I would get them all in a room and I would say, okay, guys, take your best shot. I'm gonna explain to you why we should be doing this, and I want you to bash it down. Just give me all the reasons why it's not a good idea. And the interesting thing is, if you start to engage with people, honestly engage with people, and that's a lot of chief execs can't do that, because they don't have the trust of the organization. But you have to get that trust somehow. And the best way is to go in and say, look, if we continue like this, there will be no company. Look at the graphs, look at the numbers, look at the competition. What we've got to do is we've got to get this company in a better shape. And notice the language, what we've got to do. This isn't a dictatorship, this is not Hitler or any other Roosevelt or any other, top-down type of arena. This is an organization. It's a living and breathing organization. And as soon as people realize that, then you're going to get the best out of it.
I think I fully agree with you, Neville, and I think there is a lot of learning from what we keep hearing about Afghan crisis in the news. It is not directly affecting us, but since it is in the neighborhood of India, I think especially India being a large country can take the notice of this and can pick up certain indicators and apply in the business. Especially a country like Afghanistan, which has very little production, very small amount of population, has zero significance at the moment on the world, except what we're hearing, the mayhem and the airport crisis and the Afghan crisis. Other than that, there is no production, there is nothing of that sort. So I think there are a lot of learning that we can pick up from this. And Naval has already told us that we have to remove the toxic environment in the organization. We need to do can do. As you can see in his background, he has put that very, very loud and very clear, the entire map of how do you convert from won't do to can do attitude. And this is exactly what we need. So Naval, thank you so much for joining and explaining this whole subject and how we can learn, all the companies and chief executives can learn from this Afghan crisis. I think you have explained beautifully. Thank you so much. Any last words you would like to add?
Well, not really. I mean, like anything else, good leaders learn from every situation, not just the situations they're in, but what's happening around them, that they may have no influence on or no impact on whatsoever. And the Afghanistan crisis, I mean, we're not putting two words together that no one else is using here. It is, I can see it in the distance on the TV. It says the Afghan crisis. It is a crisis. And people are making big of this crisis. And there are deadlines to be adopted. And now all the panic is we're not going to be able to do that in the deadline. Okay, well, do whatever you can in the deadline and try and negotiate your way out of other things. If we have to remember here, the Taliban are already saying that they are a different organization. They will be working within the Muslim arena, the Islamic arena, and they will be operating in their world, which is absolutely fine. That's what countries do. We operate in our world. You operate in your world. Hopefully, there's some common ground between us. And if there's common ground, then trade happens. So we've got no other experience of, this changed manager that's coming in now, rather than what they're saying. So seeing is believing, And that's another thing about being a leader in an organization. People will see who you are by what you do. Not just by what you say, but by what you do. And that's the message. If you're going to be a change in your organization, let people see what you do, not just by saying it, but by demonstrating it, by doing it.
Thank you so much, Naval, for sharing your thoughts and your advices. I think these are very valuable and all of us can learn from all this. So friends, Naval is, I think, heading towards his vacation. So we wish him all the best and say that, you enjoy yourself, Naval, and we'll catch up with you after we have returned to the world from your camping trip.